We're on page 33. And just to recap what he started to speak about on 31, it was chapter 4. T'nai Rishon, he calls this the first condition, the first prerequisite. What is that? Bikoiris ha-mechanech va-madrich, the self-examination of the educator and the guide and the guidance counselor, biyachas liatzmei, in about himself, and he does that by introducing the idea of every person has milas and chesroinus. There's no such a thing as a person without virtues and deficiencies. If you find me someone like that, he's not a person. He's an angel. He's a malach. And even malachim, it says in Kabbalah and Hasidus, are limited to their mission. So that itself is a deficiency. They cannot do everything. Only a neshama. This is an important point. The virtue of a soul over the neshama, over a malach, is that a neshama has limitless potential. So that's why, Yoini, because we have a neshama, we are able to do things that maybe we weren't raised with. We weren't born with those talents and character traits. But the fact is that our neshama has it all. So the body might not have it. If you access the neshama and you have the right key to access that aspect of the soul, you will at some point in your life, and no one knows when that'll be. It's up to the person when he goes about to access it. He'll be a different person. So
kind of like a get, right?
A get?
A ger.
A ger, yes. The Rebbe always repeated what it says. The Mishnah, the Gemara says, there are three people that their sins, transgressions are forgiven or not there. Cotton shenoila, a minor, cotton that becomes bar mitzvah, or cotton shenoila. Anyway, gersh in this gayer, a convert that converts, and chosen b'yoim chasenose, a groom, right? So the question is asked, why does it say gersh in this gayer? Yaakov. It should say, it's not gersh in this gayer, it's goish in this gayer. He wasn't a ger at the time of conversion. He became a ger. What was he before? A Gentile, a non-Jew, a goy. So it's explained. The reason is that this shows that the ger always had a Jewish spark in him, and he was never a goy. Although, according to Jewish law, he was a goy, and he needs a conversion, and everything else that goes along with it. Nevertheless, halachic, the language of Chazal is indicative that he was always a ger. A ger also means foreign and strange. It was lost. It became foreign. It became strange. Yaakov, you want to say something?
I do. We had a terrible mice in Chicago, and I'd like to mention a ger who I was very close with was murdered. And the Levaya was on Friday. His name was Akiva Mordechai ben Avram. He was a very sweet guy, and just a terrible story here.
No, the able to help. You should have Aliyas on the Shama, and there should be less of these killings in Chicago. Too many killings in Chicago. So you guys from Chicago here online, pray for Chicago. Anyway, let's go back to the text. So Yaini is saying that this idea that I'm mentioning is similar to the ger, that the ger always had the potential in him. So that's a very good comment and remark you made. But getting back to the text, so the Rebbe says that every person has milas and chesroinus. And by the way, this is such an important thing to keep in mind always, because we're so quick to blame. We blame. We blame ourselves and we blame others. What are you blaming yourself and blaming others? You have miles of chesroinus. That's how you're born. You're in a constant battle. Chapter 27 of Tanya is a must-learn for everyone. The Rebbe opens our eyes and tells us in chapter 27 of Tanya, based on what it says in Pirkei Avos, Lokach notzarta. This is why you were created, to battle the Yetzer Hara. The Rebbe teaches over there, this is the mission of man. And anyone that says to himself, wait a minute, I worked so hard, I daven, I learn, I give tzedakah, I move to Eretz Yisrael, I'm doing all good things. Why does the Yetzer Hara bother me? Why does he make me struggle? Why does he give me tests? Says the Alter Rebbe in 27, you're a Balgaiva. That's his response. Look at 27. If you think that way, you're an egomaniac. You're arrogant. You know why? Because you think you're a tzaddik that doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. Well, guess what? You're not. And every person who's not a tzaddik and has a Yetzer Hara has to struggle. And not has to struggle. Struggling is good. And that's what we're learning in this chapter over here. That avodah includes taking the milas and chesroinus, assessing them, and balancing them. So then he says, towards the end of the first 31 at the bottom, going on to 33, he says, there are two types of categories that these virtues and deficiencies find themselves in, or consist of. One is tiviyim toldosiyim, which means innate from birth. And then the second one is tiviyim regilusayim, page 33, top of the page, habits. Then he says, and Moshe asked about this yesterday, pointed it out because it was important. He says, a person who works on himself can transform his innate natural tendencies to become part of his essence in a good way. And he can also take the habits and make them natural tendencies. So we have three things, and I pointed this out yesterday. We have habits, we have innate character issue, traits, and then we have etzem, the essence, the person in his essence. And we spoke about that yesterday. Now let's continue now on page 33, second paragraph. Muvan adover. Muvan adover itself, it's understood that these two forms, Aleph, mareches hamaylis, the form of virtues, and Beis, mareches hachesroinos, and the form of the deficiencies, einon misgadlois, misrachvois, umishtorshois. 3 words. Misgadlois is from the shoresh godel, great. Misrachvois is from the shoresh rachav, broad. Umishtorshois, which means they take deeper root from the shoresh word. The word shoresh, umishtorshois, einon misgadlois, and misrachvois, umishtorshois mitzad atzmam. They're not gonna get any better or any worse on their own. They're gonna be stagnant. Beli shum shkida avodah upoel, without effort. Right? You could be born with the greatest talents. If you don't use them, they can remain with you till your grave. The Alter Rebbe employs, the Frierdiker Rebbe employs the concept that's brought in Tanya as well from a pasuk, the idea, God, Hashem, made one opposite the other. Just as man will not comprehend and will not become wise, beloy limud, without study, there are no shortcuts. If you don't learn, you don't know. Hinikein leis gadel v'yisrachiv, so too, hachisorin, the deficiency will not become greater and broader, beloy shkidas tashmishe behem, without effort that you invest in it. The Rebbe is not saying, he's not suggesting you do that. He's just saying that why is it that how is it that deficiencies grow within a person? It's because you're being shaken in them, you're invested in them, you're using them. The Alter Rebbe, go back to Tanya chapter 23, the Alter Rebbe says over there that the body, our body, eats and sleeps and and uses. He says just by the fact that we eat and sleep and we do everything the body does, it makes our body ragil with these things. So we become more like more of food and more more gashmias. In other words, it's not that I did anything wrong, but the fact is I have to have my coffee in the morning or my orange juice with breakfast. I just silly things to show. I was down in Florida for Pesach by my kids, right? So it's a little hot. So my son said he has a second car that I could use. I said thank you very much. It didn't have air conditioning. I said, in Florida, a car without air conditioning? And you know what? Like, I know about it already here before I went. And I said, I should rent a car, but it's a headache, and, and it was the springtime, it was expensive. And then, I got into that car. I opened all 4 windows, and I drove down to 95, and it was a Machaya. Now, a Machaya mean it's still not air conditioned. But the point is, you become so ragil to certain lifestyle, like already sitting here, I'm worrying, what am I going to do when I have to drive somewhere I don't have air conditioning? So that's what the Alter Rebbe say. That's what the Rebbe is saying over here. He's saying that a chesaron, a deficiency, will be stagnant if you let it be. But if you invest in it, and what I added now is that investing means usage of it. The very fact that every day we eat, we sleep, and then we do whatever we do in Gashmias. So all of a sudden, we must have our food. It comes a fast day, we run to the pharmacy to buy the pills that help us fast and all that. I guess this is the argument to the natural, what do they call it, Hillel, the naturalists, the naturists, say that, just be with nature. Go back to the way it was once in many aspects. Some not kosher, some kosher. But the idea being, who says you have to eat processed foods? It's unhealthy. Eat the grains, eat the vegetables, eat them, So the nekuda is that the gashmias becomes shkida. You put effort and energy just by osmosis, that's when the deficiencies grow on you, and all of a sudden you turn around and you say, what happened over here? Yes, Hillel, you want to say something?
No.
No, okay.
I just...
Okay, right. Yes, Jonathan, yes.
What is the there in this particular case?
Oh. Zelu mazeh, I think in this case means just as if you want your milas, your virtues to be stronger and better and more effective, you have to invest in them. In the negative, if you invest in the chesroinus, in the deficiencies, it's going to make you uglier. It's going to make you more deficient. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I thought he was saying just like if you want to develop a talent, you have a talent, you have a natural inclination, you have to put work into it. Similarly, you have to put work into to knowing and recognizing and opposing your negative forces. I
don't know. I also thought when I learned, before, I don't know, look at the language. וכמו לא ישכיל לאדם וישחקים בלא לימוד, הנה כן לא יסגדל ויסרחב החסרון בלא שקידס תשמישה בהם. So too, the deficiency will not be broader and greater. So how do you see your interpretation in those words?
I don't see it in that sentence. You're right, but
right.
yes.
I know. It makes more sense what you said, but I don't think that's what he's saying according to the text over here, and therefore I explained it that way. Okay, next paragraph.
It's such a different quality of language than we're used to.
I know. That's the hardship. Yeah, exactly. Tam Zeh, third paragraph, guys. Tam Zeh Niroyim, therefore we see Bemuchesh. We see with our own eyes in actuality, Liitim Kroivos, quite often, Asher Yelodim, Monorim, children or youth, Balik Yishoyin Rav. They have great talents, or the opposite, they have great deficiencies and bad character. All of a sudden, they remain stagnant, without either of them being developed. And he explains, in those that have great talents, their talents remain stagnant if there's no use of their talents, right? I want to play football, I want to do this, I want to do that, and okay, you're in school, you're in yeshiva, you're 13, you're 14, okay, but you have some talents in those areas, why don't you develop them? Or the same is true, where someone's only steiging and they have a talent in music, a talent in art. They should be given a way to express those talents. And when that doesn't happen, the talent remains stagnant. And in those of the youth and children that have some ugly tendencies, again, the way I understand, their deficiencies will remain stagnant. Now, to me, that's a good thing. But I think what he means is that if you don't develop a way to deal with your deficiencies, those deficiencies will remain stagnant, but they're there. In other words, the fact that you either was born with a deficiency or you developed a certain deficiency, if you don't work to change it and transform it, it's walking with you, and it's always there with you. Let's go further. Yes?
And would increase, and its koyach would increase, no?
And its koyach will, I think it's going to speak about that a little later, yes. The Sibas HaDovid, what's the reason? Because when it comes to the virtues, what's missing is the investment, the effort, by developing HaKishronis, the talents, and v'chaseros ha'izdamnus, and you're missing the opportunity by developing the wayward impulses. Again, the language implies so what's wrong with that? Why shouldn't I remain stagnant and just let them be? So I believe that it means that you're missing opportunities to transform the deficiencies. And this is a very important idea, especially with our children, grandchildren, and the youth, to find, opportunities and ways to have them develop their strengths, and at the same time to deal with the issues. It's a combination. It's a combination of both. You cannot just say, I'll deal with the strengths, give opportunity for strengths, and just let the deficiencies ride on their own and be dormant, because there will be a time when it will come out and it won't be good. So you might as well invest now in ridding oneself or one's children and youth and all that from these issues. And that's what the Rebbe is getting at. What he's getting at is he's telling the educator, you might have a student in your classroom that's quiet and but you have to really assess what are his strengths, what are his weaknesses, and you need to develop a plan to help him in both areas. To help him both in those virtue areas, to develop those talents more and more, and at the same time to give him a path from his youth to slowly obliterate and get rid of negative character traits, even though some of them he was born with. That's what he's saying. Next paragraph. However, even someone whose base characteristics have grown, whether it be from those base character traits that are innate, that he was born with, or whether it be those character traits that he picked up through habits, hispatchu ba'ofen parua, and they were developed by the individual in a wild way, in a parua, like I told yesterday, that language. Not poria. Poria is from the root peru. Parua is a different word. Parua means wild, untamed. This individual has the ability not only to push them aside and to remove them from himself, he can also transform them from bad to good, from disgusting to beautiful. This is what I was telling you yesterday. Because Hashem from above gives every single yid kifi in Yonov, based on the Jew situation, the koyach that comes me'elyon. So now he's introducing the concept that even if things are natural to a person, and even if you feel that you made such a habit of it, and it's hard to uproot and to change, you need to know that you have a koyach elyon, which is neshama. And knowing that you have a koyach elyon that Hashem gives to every single person, if you could access that, Hashem, through that koyach, will help you change the situation. And the Rebbe quotes the Gemara that the Alter Rebbe quotes in chapter 1 of Tanya. We administer an oath to the soul before it descends on earth into the body, Tehi tzaddik, be righteous. It's explained, Inyan shvuazu, this oath, shehu hasoveya hanafshi. Right? The word shavua has three meanings, three words associated. The etymology of shavua. Sheva, 7, soveya, satiated, and shavua, an oath. So here he quotes, he's referring to the second meaning, that the word shavua means that Hashem, that when you take an oath, and when Hashem gives an oath, when Hashem gives an oath, makes the soul take an oath prior to descend into a body, Hashem is satiating vis-a-vis that oath. The neshama, he calls it here, look at the wording here, guys, Shu hasoveya hanafshi, the spiritual, the soul. Hashem empowers the soul, fills it up, Moshe. Soveya, I feel full, I can't eat anymore, I had enough pizza already, enough. Right? The neshama has been satiated with Hashem's special koyach. You understand? And this makes the neshama, if just accessed, able to accomplish, to overcome. Because the neshama, our neshama got this prior to us coming into our goof, our bodies. And the Rebbe now quotes the Gemara, Asher lefum gamlo sichla, based on the camel, is its load. Shalakol echod noisei, next page, 35. To every person, noisei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem gives koiches ruchniim, spiritual koiches, lahapech hashoicho l'nohoira, to transform darkness to light, v'toamin miriru l'miska, and to sweeten bitterness to sweetness, b'avaydosai, through serving God, b'yigias basar v'nefesh, through the divine service known as the effort of the flesh and the soul. So the Rebbe says here, very briefly, he doesn't elaborate, remember, because this is Klolei, it's principles. So he just gives us a principle. And the principle is like this. You tell me that you're born a certain way. You tell me you have a limitation because you habituated yourself in a certain way. So the Rebbe says, I'll even accept that. But what you're forgetting and what you need to do is remember that Hashem, who made you, gave you something before you came on earth that's in your system. And what did he give you? He gave you a koyach elyon, a godly, not a human, a godly koyach. So you're telling me that humanly you can't overcome. You have an addiction. You have a craving. You have an indulgence. You have a taiva. Says the Rebbe, I understand. But you have a koyach elyon that you're not talking about. And you have that too. And if you access your koyach elyon through work, it's avodah b'yigias basar v'nefesh. It doesn't come through, just laying around and wasting time. And when you access that, you'll be able to overcome. So the Rebbe says that the educator and the guy, the chanech and the madrich, they need to explain this to students and to develop it with students and to really make it crystal clear. And when we do this, we have more success, both in ourselves. And again, remember, here he's talking about, right, what was the Tanai Rishon? At the beginning of chapter 4, it was, one second, Yenison, it was the principle, the prerequisite principle that the educator and the guide must self-examine himself. So what he's saying is, you have to do that too. In order for you to get this accomplished in your student, they have to see it in you. And if they don't, you know what they say, you're a hypocrite. And we have plenty of that too. You preach one thing and you do otherwise. So the Rebbe says, Tanai Rishon is for the educator to live that way, to do that. And here we ask ourselves the question, do educators, do we as parents, do we do that? And I think we could conclude we do some of it, but there's much more room to grow, because it's so easy to tell others to do something. But dugma chaya, the best way of impacting a person is being a living example of what you want to impact him or her with. Yes, Yonason, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, this idea, that I used to be, I got a PA in religious education from Morristown, and I got a master's degree in special education from Delphi University. So I was teaching special ed, in New York. And that was an experience, it really was. You have to develop individualized programs for each kid, and you have to write down their strengths and their weaknesses and what programs you're going to have to try to develop them. It's not an easy job. It's really not, because when you're trying to educate a child, you concentrate on partly information. You have to make sure they get information. And then you got another job is to watch their character and develop that. That's another thing altogether.
Right, and what's the Rebbe teaching us here? That it's more important for to educate to deal with the character than the limud. Remember what he said in one of the previous chapters. The limud, they'll either get more or less, a little more information, a little less information. Okay? But character is life skills. Character is menschlichkeit. Character is everything that's going to make them or break them later in life. And you're right in what you're saying. It's a heavy task.
Yeah, you see, in the secular school, in the public school, they don't really care about character development. They just go there, to get minimum amount of behavior in order to have a classroom where people listen and they behave.
Right.
They're not interested in making the person develop. They're just trying to keep the status quo.
Yeah, of course. Yes, Hillel.
I have a kind of a structural question. Going back to the beginning of this chapter, or this Pelek, tonight Rishon, B'koros HaMechanech, V'hamadrich b'yachas la'atzmo, in connection with himself, right?
Yes.
It seems like, but what this chapter is really talking about is like how he should view other people more than how he views himself.
Right. I picked that up. Yes, but in order to accomplish this in others, you have to do it in yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. So in other words, I would say that the general chapter, its language and the paragraphs and everything else and the structure is an inyan klali. It's a general idea of who man is and what the issues are, the strengths, the weaknesses, etc. And both the educator and needs to do that to succeed with the students as far as character development. I know I put a lot of the way I taught it was more about the recipient, the student, but the truth is he's talking it. I said it, but I didn't maybe say it with much elaboration. He's talking to the educator that if you want to succeed in this manner with your student, you need to do it within yourself. The kids will learn to.
In that sense, that it seems to me like it's towards that goal rather than sort of saying these are the qualities. Rather than emphasizing these are the qualities one needs in order to sort of contemplate being an educator. So it's like it's addressed to somebody who's already made the decision. This is what I'm going to be doing. So these are the qualities I need to cultivate.
Okay, and
as opposed to a different question like, should I be a mechanech?
Right. Good. So remember, historically, he had the Rashab had the previous Rebbe put this together for the two educators who are already educators, mashpiyim in Lubavitch Yeshiva, Tomchei Tmimim. You understand? So that's the history. That's why it's so important to know its history. But by extension, Hillel, it does answer what you just asked. Should I be a teacher, an educator? Am I shaykh to be an educator? And Yonason just said it. You heard what he said, It's a lot of work. My wife also, does this special ed teaching. But Yodas is speaking about special ed, but even outside of special ed, a regular teacher in the classroom, and in any situation, again, I think I believe that if more teachers would look at this and inculcate it and develop it, and there's more of it going on, Baruch Hashem, we would have a lot more success with our youth, and you all know what's going on, of course, with the youth. I told you, and I'll finish with this. When my son was 15 or so, I was having a hard time with him in yeshiva, and I come from a traditional place. You learn in yeshiva, and that's it. There's no way you learn in yeshiva. And, he's having issues. So I didn't know what to do. Someone told me to call, I think it was the Benzion Twersky, I think Rabbi Twersky's son, who's also a professional here in Brooklyn. So,
I've met him.
You met him.
Fine person.
Very fine person. So I think I called him. I remember I was laying down, I was talking on the phone, and he said to me, he says, not every boy or girl are cut out to be in yeshiva. And to me that was like hair-raising, and like coming from you, because I know who I'm talking to. We come from the same cheder. You know what I'm saying? We grew up together in the same, and it was an eye opener, and I accepted it. And he continued in yeshiva, Baruch Hashem, and because I had because I had good educators, because his principal understood and accepted what I said, and I told him, "You're the principal. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I know if you want to have success, try this," because he was, he wasn't good in written tests, he was good in oral tests. I said, give him an oral test, even though others are taking written tests. So, don't do it in public, do it in private, in your office, whatever. That's my suggestion, but you're the principal. And he did it, and he turned them around, and then he continued in yeshiva. So there's no question that it was a good educator. I saw this firsthand. A good educator made a change in this young man's, life for the rest of his life, So this is why this kuntris is a very important kuntris, and we need more teachers like that. And like I say, we need better funding. I'm serious, for teachers and educators. There's not enough of that. There was a Jew here in Brooklyn, in New York, Mr. Joseph Gruss. You'll see. I don't know if his name is on the. Yeah, his name is on the Chaim Berlin, on the Babich. He put up entire buildings. He's a survivor. He did very well, and he was very successful. I don't know if he did anything there to Yisrael. Well, he actually the YU campus in Yerushalayim. It's the Gruss. That's his product. That's his baby. Anyway. So he has funds even now. It's called the Joseph Gruss Foundation. He has funds to pay substantial extra money to teachers who excel. And that's what I'm talking about. It makes a big difference, and that's also sometimes, before yeshiva or the school starts, you give the teacher a little extra money, it'll go a long way. I'm not looking at it as a bribe. I'm just saying, you got to use your seichel, people are struggling. People need money. And it will help. It will help. And besides, it's tzedakah. So, what's the worst thing you give tzedakah? So, let's go. I'll see everyone tomorrow. Mr. Shem, we'll learn. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.